Watch out, let me get a shot. Where they at? Where they at? Put on that rooftop. Hey! Give me a fucking 42 in the United States!
We're east of the riverbed. And, we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Colin Sesak, thank you so much for coming. You know, we've been batting emails back and forth. I found you, Colin, as you know, on the Combat Story podcast. You did an episode there, which I thought was fantastic. And by the way, for the audience out there, if you're not aware of the Combat Story podcast, go look it up. It's mostly special operations oriented, but it is an excellent podcast that I listen to, and I encourage you to listen to, because I make no claim that we've got all the knowledge here trapped on the Combat Leadership podcast. But Colin was a 82nd Airborne guy and served in combat, later became a Green Beret Special Forces medic. So he's got extensive experience, and based on his interview with the Combat Story podcast, I realized that he had a lot of lessons and insights and advice to pass on to future combat leaders and all of that. So with that, I'll shut up. Colin, thanks again for coming. And why don't you start off with your origin story so people get to know you a little bit better?
Okay, sure. Yes, and just a point of clarification, I did not finish the Green Beret pipeline. I did the Special Operations Combat Medic, which is like the 18 Delta portion.
Yeah.
The rest of the pipeline. So I would be considered like a SOCM medic. So it's just one step below an 18 Delta.
Okay.
Just for clarification.
I can
explain why I made that choice to not continue. So I was born and half raised in Chicago, Illinois. Moved to Idaho as a kid when I was like 9. Definitely Idaho's much more my speed. It's outdoorsy and, you know, chasing snakes and catching lizards, things like that, which much better for a 10-year-old me than, you know, being in Chicago with all the traffic and the trains and, oh God, right? So moved to Idaho. Great place, love it here. Joined the Army right out of high school. The joke that my generation have is we're the Black Hawk Down generation. Like that movie Black Hawk Down, right? Everyone wanted to join after that. It was just such a cool thing. So I was thinking about the military even before 9/11. But then 9/11 happened when I was, I think, 10th grade, 11th grade, something like that. And then that just kind of confirmed it, that I was like, okay, well, that's something I should do. My parents were a little against it, which I think is normal for, you know, you got your kid in high school and he's thinking about doing that. My mom was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and my dad got drafted in Vietnam. It was a conscientious objector, so that was kind of a weird mix there. But they supported it. They were like, okay, that's what you really want to do. So I chose to be a medic, which is good because you help people, you learn a skill, all that fun stuff. Infantry would have been cool too, but I just wanted just something I could maybe take with me if I left the military. I wasn't really sure I wanted to do it forever.
Right.
So joined in 2004. Went Airborne, 82nd Airborne Division. Did that for 4 years. Did that for an enlistment. Transferred out to the Idaho Guard for like a year. That was not super fun. So I got out. Then I was out going to college, and I ended up dropping out of college and going to Afghanistan and working for Blackwater, doing like protection for the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah.
So I did a trip to Afghanistan as a dirty contractor. Finished that up. The same thing. Said like, all right, I'm good. I'll just be a normal person now. Went back to school. in school for about a year, and then I joined 19 Special Forces Group as a medic, and then, hopefully trying to pursue that pipeline. Then I went through the Special Operations Combat Medic course at Fort Bragg. In the military lingo, we call it a Whiskey 1. That's the identifier. Went through the course. It was about a year or so, and finished that. And then I did another contract in Afghanistan, and I was debating finishing the whole pipeline and doing language and all that fun stuff. But as I was considering doing that, I was given the offer to deploy to Western Africa with 3rd Special Forces Group as a medic on the team. So, and it was kind of a fluke thing because normally they don't pull guard guys, or they can, but it's kind of weird. But I basically got a phone call one day that said, "Hey, 3rd Special Forces Group is going to Niger to go after ISIS. They need a medic. Do you want to come?" I mean, I have to, right? I can't say no. That's why I joined the Army, is to do stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Went to Africa as a junior medic on the team. I got hazed for a little bit because I was on the ODA and I was a guard guy, and I showed up late because the paperwork was all screwed up, right? So anyway, I kind of showed up in interesting circumstances. But anyway, just did my job, worked through it. And now I'm actually still good friends with that whole team, and it was a really good experience. The deployment was, fun, right? We were chasing ISIS. We were going after some bad guys. So I believed in the mission. We had good intel that there were bad guys doing bad things. And so I worked with that ODA for deployment, and we just did that. It was actually a really cool opportunity because that was before the big ambush that killed those Americans. We actually left 2 weeks before that happened. So that was in our Yeah. And we feel a little guilty because we were going after that guy the whole time. We never caught him. And then that ambush happened. So the feeling is, well, maybe if we had done a better job, we could have captured that guy, and then that ambush wouldn't have happened. I don't know if that's true, but we did feel a little bit of guilt about that. But it was cool because we were so far out that the seniors of each, the Bravo, the Echo, Charlie, Delta, et cetera, all the different specialties would make their own missions. So we would make our own ConOps, our own concept of operations. We build our own intel. We go out, we build our own target packages. And basically the command down in Niamey was like, "Yep, sounds good." And they would just sign it. And so it was a cool experience because we really were doing the ODA thing. We were making our own missions and executing. So that was a really good experience to see how that works. And also kind of the trust that came from the higher command. And we had built that trust up, and we're like, "Well, this is what we want to do." And they were 4 hours away by helicopter, and they would just be like, "Yeah, okay, we trust you guys. Go ahead." So that was a really cool experience to see that side of it. Then I finished that Africa trip, and again debated well, maybe I should go finish the pipeline. And then I was given an opportunity to deploy to Thailand and the Philippines on a JSAT on an ODA team. So again, I was a medic in Asia, teaching medicine, which is my job. That's my current job, is I'm a teacher. So I loved it. So I got to travel all over Asia and teach combat medicine to different agencies in Thailand and the Philippines. And so I was already doing the job. I really enjoyed it. And so I was just kind of hopping on whatever deployment popped up.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while. Got my teaching job. I found a really cool teaching position here in Idaho that I enjoy. And then about done with the military, but then last summer, 2 summers ago, I was given an opportunity to deploy to Poland with the Defense Intelligence Agency as a medic on their task force. So it was a Five Eyes task force, and I was just a medic, just kind of supporting the mission, and whatever they needed, I was there for medical duties in our little compound, kind of middle of nowhere, no good hospitals around, kind of a deal. So me and another 18 Delta were the medic for the task force for our little agency, so to speak. And I got to do that too, and I got to teach medicine there, and that was also a good experience. And so that's about the down and dirty of it. Started in the 82nd. contracted for a bit, and then I jumped on a few soft deployments. And it's looking like my time's about up now, just because I've been in like 19 years. So probably about time to start filling that paperwork out.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for clarifying the Green Beret pipeline and the special ops medic thing. I'll read up on that and learn. I didn't know that existed. As a Marine, we're not really in tune with that. And I want to clarify. You really illustrated your deployments as that special ops medic. Could you tell us again? I'm not sure you went into it in detail. You did make combat deployments or a deployment with the 82nd too.
Oh, yes,
right?
yeah. So I just wanted to kind of do an overall quick explanation. So the 82nd, yes, I did a 15-month combat deployment in 2006 and 2007.
What roles did you serve during that deployment?
I was a medic for a platoon. So I was a platoon medic, a grunt medic, and then we were in the city of Tikrit, which is kind of the northern part of the Sunni Triangle, right above Samarra, right above Balad, kind of central Iraq, kind of. And then I also did a few months up in Talafar, which was up kind of by Mosul, up in the northern part. And then when Tikrit got real bad, we went back down to Tikrit, and so I did 15 months with the 82nd.
Was that I think from listening to your previous podcast, sounded like at least one of those locations was fairly active combat-wise. Yeah,
Tikrit had a lot of stuff going on. Talafar had a lot of sectarian violence going on, like violence against each other. But Tikrit had a lot more IEDs and a lot more bad guys, and we were raiding houses, and we'd surround a city and then cordon it off and give them like 2 days to turn over the bad guys, or we would go in. Most of the time, no one would come forward, so then we would just go in hard and kick down doors and try to capture everyone on our list.
I'm dated on this, and it's just gray in my mind. Was Tikrit an area where Saddam Hussein was from?
That is his hometown. Technically, Adwar is where he was found, yeah. And then like Oja, so Oja and Adwar were a little bit south of Tikrit, and that was where he was from. That's where his kids are buried. That's where his spider hole was found.
Yeah.
So really strong Saddam sentiment down there. I mean, we'd raid houses and there'd be posters of Saddam on the walls. And so we were there when he was killed. And that really set that city on fire for a bit.
When they hung him?
Yep.
Put him to death. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. I can imagine that would increase the activity level. So yeah, cool. Well, I always start with this question, Colin. If somebody recognized you from that podcast and hopefully this podcast and say, and you were clearly going in an elevator somewhere, guy only had a minute or two with you and said, Colin, I know you don't have time. What's your high level philosophy on combat leadership? What would you say?
I mean, I know it's a cliche, it's in a bunch of Army manuals, but really like leading from the front and being there with your guys. Because I remember being the young guy who didn't know anything. And we looked up to those guys who had already deployed. And, we looked to them for answers. And we had a few good ones where they were like, come with me, let's do this together. Like, hey, I'm right next to you. So it's really like lead from the front, be with your guys. And don't ask them to do something that you wouldn't do yourself, because you really build that trust. And you're not going to feel great if your leader is stuck in his Humvee and is like, all right, hey, go over there and check that out. I'm going to be in here hiding. That just feels weird. You kind of immediately kind of don't trust what's happening. So you got to be with your guys, lead from the front. And that's really the whole thing of teamwork, is being together. And so you got to be in the trenches, in the mud with your guys. You have to be there, and you have to, and also you have to show what you expect. So if you expect to go clear this trench or to do this, or what, you expect certain things to happen, you need to demonstrate that you are willing to do that same thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. There's some stated lessons. I also think there's at least one implied lesson that I want to dig out of you. A lot of what you just said, as you know, is just classic leadership. Lead by the front, lead by example, be present, be approachable. But you mentioned about, hey, it's not good if the team leader, squad leader, whoever, the lieutenant is in the Humvee hiding, which tells me you either observed that or heard about it. And we got a lot of young guys.
That was a story. I was not present for it, but I did hear of an interaction where a squad leader was in the Humvee and they started taking fire, and he refused to dismount the vehicle.
Yeah. The reason why I'm bringing that up. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. And I've observed that too and heard even more anecdotes about that during my time. And, from participants in the long wars, which, I was retired long before that happened. And we got a lot of young guys watching this. In fact, somebody's going to be watching this that's not even born. I don't know what the internet's going to look like 50 years from now, but this will be out there somewhere. And the lesson to the young idealistic guys there's a lot of great combat leaders out there. And there's also a very small slice of inferior, if not caustic, toxic, dangerous combat leaders. And I don't want anybody out there to be so idealistic that they have no awareness that this does exist, and don't be shocked if it happens to you, because then you're going to have to adapt and overcome. Any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you have questions about good leadership and bad leadership. And in the 82nd, I saw a fair amount of bad leadership. There were some really toxic people, and it can happen. I mean, it's definitely out there, and it has to do with platoon culture, company culture, battalion culture. Can really influence good leadership or bad. It's like, will you reward that leadership if it is toxic? Will you address it? Like, how do you handle that? And then that comes down to that culture of the senior leaders taking that platoon sergeant aside, or even the first sergeant taking the first sergeant aside and say, "What are you doing?" Right? And that didn't always happen. Unfortunately, the 82nd, there was plenty of examples where it's like you wish the sergeant major would pull the first sergeant aside and be, "Why are you keeping your guys in the company area till 8 o'clock every night? Like, why are you why are you doing these things?" And sometimes it was addressed. Some companies and battalions would address bad stuff like that, but a lot of times they would just let it go. They go, "Well, hey, that's the first sergeant. Company business is first sergeant business. So if he wants to run it that way, I'm not going to get in the way." And I feel like that should have, there was things that really could have been addressed that would have been a better experience for everybody involved.
Yeah. Well, this is a natural segue, some of your previous comments. Along the way, were there any mentors or role models that had a really profound positive impact upon you and your development as a combat warrior?
So it was difficult because when in the one platoon I was at in the 82nd, unfortunately, it was not great leadership. The problem was the platoon sergeant was, one of the most evil people I've ever met. Very toxic. Just a quick anecdote about, what's an example? What do you mean? Well, it was his thing. It was his favorite thing. When the new medics would come to the platoon, you'd obviously get hazed forever. You would get, we call it smokes, right? So push-ups, flutter kicks, all just shenanigans. He would force you to do those different things until you admitted you wanted to kill him. That was the stopping point. So, and for me, that was very confusing because I said, so he's my platoon sergeant, he's my platoon leadership. And literally in the first 20 minutes I'm here, I'm going to be getting punished to the point that I want to kill my own leadership. And it was such a twilight zone. Is this, what's happening? Right. And then unfortunately with that toxic environment, it bled out to all the squad leaders and everybody else. And so the whole platoon was just kind of a mess. So I did have good leadership later, but just on that initial piece, it was like, what is this? Where am I? And they love to be like, well, shit rolls downhill, and which is a terrible thing to say. But then later, I did have a better platoon leadership, and he was much more with it, and no one was like afraid of him in the same way. I feel like my first platoon sergeant, for him, fear and respect were the same. And it's almost like, if you weren't afraid of him, you didn't respect him, kind of a deal, which is nonsense. So later I had another platoon sergeant who wasn't like that. You really respected him, but you also weren't afraid of him, and you could talk to him. And that for me was a huge lesson of being just approachable and just feeling like the weight, right? It just that evil platoon sergeant, he'd walk in the room and the whole room would change. Everyone in the room would kind of shudder a little bit. And I was like, I guess this is how it's supposed to be, right? And then I got new leadership, and I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be like this at all. And for me, that taught me, and has been reinforced throughout my career, because shit rolls downhill, you're right. You can push it right past you down that hill, or you can stop it, and you can address it. And for me, because I know what it was, maybe I have too much empathy, but I remember what it was like when shit would roll down. You'd see it coming. You knew something was coming, right? And then that squad leader would just pass it right on to you. And they would even say, well, shit rolls downhill. This happened to me, so it's your turn, kind of a thing. And I could never do that. Because I hated them doing it, and it was so counterproductive and toxic. So you can continue the cycle, or you can stop it. And I didn't have a choice. I mean, just because I remember so much what that was, then that feeling of helplessness and just being like, how is this allowed to happen? Like, this leadership, this guy's supposed to help me out. I mean, a little something. He's supposed to be some sort of support network, and he's absolutely not on my side at all. And he's just shoving me down as best he can. So anyway, I saw both. I initially saw really bad leadership, really toxic, bad stuff. And then throughout my career, I've had better leadership, especially in 19th Group, that's kind of reinforced those things. And good experience. But man, I almost think I kind of had to see the bad stuff first, just to see like, oh, this is that side of it. And then my career, I got to see how it doesn't have to be like that. And obviously much better outcomes when you're not a crazy asshole.
Thank you for that. We've all had experiences like that. Brings me to the next question. It's a controversial question in some quarters. Do you think there's a difference between just general military, garrison, peacetime leadership and combat leadership?
100%. 100%. Because we had one leader on the Iraq deployment. Garrison, best dude you want. Best dude. He could help you with all the paperwork. He knew the regs. He was approachable. He had garrison life figured out, and he was the person you'd want to talk to. And you knew if there were garrison shenanigans, he'd be like, all right, I'll look into it. Right. And you had that trust that he would take care of it. But combat was not his thing. And I still respect him because he knew that combat was not his thing, and he would let the squad leaders take over, or he'd let the lieutenant run it, which is maybe not how it's supposed to be, right? He's supposed to be the NCO, but he kind of knew that wasn't his thing, and he let us do it. And I remember one time we had to raid a house. We were in a QRF. Air support had lit up a bunch of dudes and chased some other guys into a house, and so we were going to go raid the house, and we pull up, and he gets out and he puts his weapon on the hood, and he's like, all right, you guys go ahead. And he just was doing security for us. So he knew that he wasn't going to be the number one man through the door. He knew that side of the military, for whatever reason, he was just not his thing. But I respect him because he knew that, and he didn't force it. And then that would be dangerous. If you have a guy who's a great garrison leader, but for whatever reason, not into combat, if he tried to force himself into combat leadership, I mean, that's dangerous. So I do respect the fact that he kind of sat back. The problem with combat is it changes every 2 seconds. And just like the feelings of, like, the emotions of it, the stress level, the panic, the anxiety, like trying to think clearly in that fog of war, requires an immense amount of flexibility, and no 2 days are the same, right? No two operations are the same potentially, because maybe that day, maybe that first day or that first night you're doing raids, like you're good to go. That second night, maybe you're a little bit more tired. Maybe by that third night, it's all been dry holes the previous 2 days. So now your morale is different because you said, I'm going to go get these guys. And 2 days later, you've been raiding 6 houses a night and you never get anybody. So on that third one, it's like, okay, well, why are we doing this? Not going to get anybody, right? So, I mean, so everything is different. Every day could be different. It requires flexibility. Whereas garrison it's protocol. Garrison is the same thing every day by definition. It's military structured. PT at 6:30, go to breakfast, show up at your office at 9, do sick call. Garrison is the lack of flexibility. And I think combat is the most flexibility because shit happens. I mean, was it Mike Tyson who said everyone has a plan until you get hit in the mouth, right?
Yes.
That's it. So, combat leadership and garrison leadership are very different.
Thank you for that. You've already talked a little bit about this. You've already answered it to some degree, but I want to clarify it as a separate question. It's a two-sided question, Colin. Based upon your personal experience and observations and hearing things from other, combat vets, are there any traits, personalities, habits, practices, leadership styles that most of the very best combat leaders seem to share in common? And then we're going to reverse that. Like, are there also all of those traits, habits, qualities, or lack thereof that most of the worst also share in common?
So I would say if I were to boil down, or I guess I'll answer the question you first asked me about, like the leadership philosophy. If I could boil it down to one word, it would be sacrifice. You are sacrificing different things, whatever that may be, for your section, or at least you should be. And then also leadership, again, comparing the good and the bad, because I've seen both. It's not yelling. My thought was, if you're truly a good leader, yelling should never enter the equation, right? And so the things that make people good leaders is, again, like, I'm with you, and also a little bit, and some people might be annoyed by this, but I think it's important, is explain like the why. So I understand military orders, salute the flagpole, okay, but I feel there's a huge difference between, hey, go do this thing, versus do this thing and here's why we're doing it. And then you get that buy-in from your requests, right? And I think it makes a huge difference. I know for me, there'd be things where I'm like, oh, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? But then if a leader was like, well, actually, here's the deal. This is the big, the long game here. This is why. I would say, oh, now I see how the pieces fit together. I'm there, right? And so you need buy-in from your section, your platoon, right? Like you need buy-in. The thing about the bad leadership that I've witnessed, I mean, really up close, was very much they wouldn't explain the why, and then they would be really bothered if you asked, because some stuff is so kind of over the top, ridiculous. You might go, but so how is this helping the overall, like the direction we're moving? And then, I mean, you would have thought you insulted their family or something. They were so bothered that you would even ask that. So it's, and they also, I don't think, understood why you were asking why. And so it was you and your leadership, the bad leaders, you are very far apart and it's very kind of almost like adversarial, like, I'm in charge, I'm telling you what to do, don't ask questions. And yes, that is part of the military, I get that, but they don't really, and they also don't care about you. That's the other thing. They don't care. I feel like some of the leaders I would have, like, I mean, you got to wonder why suicide's such a problem in the 82nd and in Fort Bragg. I think it's because there are certain leaders who, if they might think that their guys are going to commit suicide, or maybe not that far, but maybe they're just in a really bad place, they're just like, well, I don't care. He's a shitbag, or like, oh, the new private is sad. Well, you know what? The new private should be sad because he's all fucked up, so I don't care. And I've heard that before, kind of like, well, oh, he's new here and he's having problems adjusting, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, that guy might go kill himself now. So good job. Right. And it's also like not checking in with your soldiers. And at the end of the day, even in garrison, especially in the 82nd, you are in garrison, but you are moving towards the direction of combat. The deployments are always around the corner. Like when you get back from a deployment, you know when you're going again. It's just no secret there. So everything should be, garrison, but combat oriented. And part of that is working together and like being with your guys. And the bad leaders were never with their guys, if that makes sense. They were very much like kind of on their throne and just would tell people to do stuff. And it just gets really toxic really fast. And then am I going to work as hard or trust them at all in combat if this is how they're kind of treating me? And, probably not. And I mean, it says a lot about certain platoons will have like get-togethers years later. And some platoons never talk to each other after deployment, right? And a lot of that comes back to that company or battalion culture, and how much like we care about each other. And at the end of the day, your deployment, success or failure, will depend on your section and your team and the people you are with. And that should be the number one priority. So success or failure, depending on who you're with. Why are you going to shit on the people that you're with? Right? It's like if you had a long distance car race or a bike race, you'd probably want to take pretty good care of that car or that bike when you're going out there. And that is what good leadership is. It's like maintenance of your section of the people you're with. And you want to make sure they're in top performance, because you will need top performance in certain combat environments, right? So like you have to work towards that. And if your section is not at like the top performance, then what are you going to do about it? How are you going to fix that? Right. So that's my philosophy there, and how bad leadership really ruins it, because that's, some of these missions you only get to do once. Like if you're chasing a guy down, you only get one shot at it. So let's go in tip-top shape, ready to go.
Yeah, I thank you for that. The next question is one that I've received varying answers to, and you've observed this. I don't know if during your time in the 82nd you saw anybody get promoted into a leadership role during combat, but the general question is, do you think the average soldier, Marine, whatever, can they be mentored and developed to the point where pretty much everyone has the ability to be at least an adequate combat leader?
Yes, I think you can work towards it, but again, there are certain people who are just kind of like born leaders. They're just they just have this unique ability, and then there are people who really struggle with it. And I struggled with it because I was the dumb private making all these mistakes and stuff and seeing bad leadership, and then I was like promoted into that spot, and it was difficult. And you're like, oh man, now I'm the one making choices. Now I'm the one who's trying to like navigate this, and so you can develop it. And I think developing that leadership style or whatever, figuring out your leadership style requires the ability to like be okay with mistakes or not beat yourself up. Or if you're trying to mentor someone, if the leader you're trying to mentor screws up, makes a bad choice, whatever it is, not crushing them for it. Because if you don't have your leadership kind of philosophy figured out, or maybe you just got promoted, right? Because like when I got back from the 82nd, from the deployment in the 82nd, all the other medics, they either got out or left and went to other places. And so they're all gone. We got a whole batch of new guys. And now I'm a squad leader. Now I'm the E5 with a bunch of privates. And, I wasn't really ready for it. And so that process of like, what do I do here? You're going to make mistakes. So you have to like try to make decisions. And for me, I have to make the mistake sometimes twice before I really learn it. And so maybe I make a choice, or I tell the private, to do this or do that. And that wasn't good. That backfired. And then being able to learn from that and move on from it. And then and that's why my platoon sergeant I might have made the wrong choice or maybe not the best choice. And he would pull me aside and be like, well, all right, maybe how could this be done differently, right? Or like, why did you do it? And like kind of almost kind of work with me through my decision-making process. And then, so it can be cultivated. It takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of time. And if you were, promoted in combat or something, like maybe you don't have the luxury of time or the luxury of patience, because if you are in the middle of a week-long op or something, you're not going to have that same availability of patience. So it's tough, but you can cultivate it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very wise words that I agree with, by the way. Before I ever served in combat, I had questions about myself. I was getting good training, had good leadership, but in a nutshell, these were the questions I had. And I think everybody ponders questions similar to this, and I'd be curious to see if you did and how you handle them. Here are the questions I asked myself. Will I be too afraid to perform well under fire? And will I forget to do what I'm doing, be it a machine gunner, a medic, platoon sergeant, or whatever? Am I going to remember my job? Am I going to be paralyzed? And this one I asked, but it especially relates to you as a medic. Will I be able to handle seeing my friends killed and maimed? Because not only did I have to worry about that, you had to worry about it. And you're treating guys now, they're missing a leg or they've got gut shot. And, as you know, it doesn't look pretty like it does in the movies. You know what I mean? It's hideous. And then the big one that I think we always take for granted, will I be able to pull the trigger and kill another human being, standing in front of me, whether it's at 3 feet away or 300 meters away? Am I going to be able to do that? Your thoughts on these pre-combat thoughts?
Yeah. So I've definitely had all of those. Those are all definitely thoughts that I had. And I do remember this. Fort Bragg, the night before we deployed. So your room's packed up, everything's in storage. You know that you're hopping on the plane the next day. And I was laying in bed and I had all those thoughts. And then I had this thought, and it ended up being correct. I said, you know what? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try to answer those questions and kind of think about it and imagine how this is all going to go. But I had this little bit of a feeling that no matter what I thought about or what I managed or what I imagined, none of that was going to be close to what reality was. And so I said, well, all right, here I am really thinking about all this stuff, but maybe it's not going to be like, it's literally unimaginable. Like whatever story I tell myself right now, how it's going to be. I mean, I'm 20 years old. I'm 19 years old, whatever I was. Like, I'm going to be deployed for like at least a year and then it'll be in 15 months. And so, yes, of course you have that thought. And the problem is, there are people who, like, I've seen it where they were very good in training, but then when it mattered in combat, sometimes they freeze or they fall, they degrade, their ability kind of degrades. And so I was really afraid of that happening to me because I had never done it. I mean, I was a pretty shy kid. I didn't play football, I played soccer or whatever, but you know what I mean? It wasn't like that side of it was different for like who I was as just kind of a quiet, shy, nerdy kid. So I was definitely afraid of that. And I just resigned myself to like, well, it's going to happen. And it's a coin toss. It's a coin toss. We're just going to have to kind of see where this goes. And again, that was giving myself flexibility, because if I told myself, no, you have to be, major winners from Band of Brothers day one, and then I obviously would not do that. And then I would, beat myself up and have all this regret and everything else. So I gave myself a little bit of flexibility about, I am curious if I'm going to be able to pull this off, but I got to be a little flexible with myself because maybe I won't be. And then, will I remember what I'm supposed to do? And so some of that comes to the training, pre-deployment training, and we call that stress inoculation is another phrase I kind of like. And so you need to imitate the stress of combat, which is impossible, but you need to kind of imitate that the combat stress they will be up against. what you don't need to do, and this is the bad leadership. So the leadership knew, all right, we need to get some stress going here because, combat is stress. Okay. Well, their idea of stress was, if you don't do this right, you're going to do push-ups for 2 hours and all the yelling and all that kind of stuff. Well, that stress is very different than what you're going to see in combat. That's just like anxiety from being yelled at stress, which doesn't really help you in combat. So they were really misguided with how they tried to do that stress. So I think, and so I did get some of that training. And so I just figured same thing, like maybe it's not going to be great every time, but I got to go through it. And then seeing your friends injured, luckily I didn't have any friend die in my arms or anything terrible like that. But it's an interesting concept because when you go first deploy, it's kind of hypothetical and it's kind of just like not a game, but almost tourism a little bit. It's like, oh, this is exciting. I've always wanted to do this, right? You read about Iraq in the newspaper and now I'm here. And well, then that first guy gets killed. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is for real. So like when I was in Iraq first, so what you had mentioned earlier about some units really liked the handshake on the way out and they kind of talked things through. And this is what we experienced. And other units are like, nope, leave me alone. We'll figure it out, right? So we replaced the 101st, and it was we call it left seat, right seat ride. So it's like mostly them, and then a little bit of us, and then we kind of more and more of us will join the convoys, and then before you know it, we're almost running the convoy by ourselves, and then the 101st gets out, right? They're almost like our tour guides, so if I keep using that analogy. So for whatever reason, just like they were using other medics, they didn't need me because we're not doing full company ops. It's like one platoon at a time kind of a deal. And so they're like, no, we don't need you quite yet, just hang out. And so I'm getting mad because guys are going outside the wire, right? And then said, that's why we're here. Let's go do this. I don't want to be on base all day, behind the barbed wire. So I finally get called one day to go do a mission. And it's just a little drive-around mission. It was in Adwar, which is where they found Saddam, and Adwar is a bad place. So they're like, we're going to go to Adwar and literally we're going to tour it because this is a bad spot. And we're going to the plan was we're going to drive around and, we'll show you where some attacks, ambushes come from, or we'll show you like the city center where the city council meets and some of those things. So they say, hey, yeah, you're on the mission. You're on the manifest, so just come to the command post at like 3, and we'll go do it. So I get there at 3, and I'm like, all right, here we go. And they say, actually, man, you're not going to go. And I was mad because I was so close to finally going. I mean, some people have been out twice already. And they said, no, the medic from the 101st is going to go. He knows the area. Obviously, he's been here for a year, so he's actually going to be serving 2 roles. He'll be a medic, but he will also help the left seat, right seat ride. And so he's going to go because he knows the city really well. And so we're going to take the medic, but we're going to take him. It's his last mission. Don't worry about it. So they go out on that mission and they get attacked with a Russian anti-tank grenade, and it killed him. And it was that feeling of again, I was in my room and they were doing accountability checks. And I was like, wait, why are we doing, I'm just like hanging out. Why are we doing accountability? And they said, oh, they got ambushed in Adwar and they took casualties. And then they closed the door. They said, all right, you're here, like stay here. We just need to make sure our numbers are up. So they're just hang out. So I'm in my room and it was like the most silence I've ever heard. I just sat there and went, wait a minute. This is like, and we'd only been there for like a week. Right. And I was like, whoa, like this is not hypothetical anymore. Like this, like the adventure and going to Iraq and all the, all the movie Hollywood stuff. And then you're like, oh, this wasn't even a combat mission. We weren't chasing bad guys. Literally, we're just driving through the town, pointing things out, and they got ambushed, right? So it was like, oh, this is not hypothetical. This is, sometimes you're just driving down the road, and I guess some dude will just throw a grenade through your Humvee, and that's it. And there's really no way to stop that. I mean, there was a video of either that attack or something similar, but the guy's walking and he has a grenade in his hand and then he just literally just throws it. And it's, what are you going to do? Shoot everybody on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
And so having that moment of just like, oh, this is for real. And like, this could happen to anybody. And that was that guy's last mission. His wife had just given birth. He was going to be home in 4 days, and he didn't make it. So that has like the sobering effect and the glamour of video games, of, guns and ammo and all that. It kind of gets a little bit more serious because you realize, oh man. And then also speaking to that analogy of like making sure, everything's at 100%. You look at your weapon differently. I mean, yes, I know weapons, it's a gun, kills people, but to kind of answer your last question is, you start looking at your weapon differently and you're like, wait a minute, like before this was just a thing I cleaned and I shot targets and okay, well now this weapon has a new meaning or a meaning that I fully understand. Because before, I was shooting targets. I know I'm supposed to shoot at people, okay. But now when your friends or people or whatever have been killed, you look at your weapon differently. Like you respect your weapon differently because it's a sword and a shield, right? And if someone's coming at you, at least you have your weapon. And so that kind of, it just takes on a new feeling when you're carrying that weapon in combat, and now there's skin in the game. Now you've lost somebody that you knew, and it does change you. It does, it's a sobering thing, and you just realize it's a little bit more maybe a little bit more serious than you thought, and you better make sure your weapon's clean, right? You're not cleaning your weapon because you're getting yelled at for it. Now you're cleaning your weapon because you understand that weapon might keep you alive. Or same thing with like a Humvee, right? You're going to PMCSs are so annoying when you have to check the oil and all that stuff. Well, but in combat, you're like, actually, no, I need to make sure my Humvee is going to work, right? So it kind of refocuses some of the annoying things like the PMCSs, cleaning weapons, things like that are making sure batteries and all that stuff. That was kind of annoying before, but then maybe once you've seen some action or someone's been killed, all those tasks that used to be kind of a chore now are like really important. And so you kind of reevaluate some of the things you thought were annoying, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And it's a natural segue into the next question, which is also a controversial issue. I mean, ever since recorded history, the Spartans, the Roman legionnaires and all of that. And you just touched on it, Colin, the topic of discipline. And I would ask you to put your conventional soldier hat back on, because Soth is a different beast, different individual, different maturity level, different trust level. Let's face it. So we're talking about, young specialists, Sesak, during peacetime, and I was one of them, PFC, like, what's the problem with these lifers? I mean, what's their fixation on haircuts? Uniform inspections, PMing the vehicles, weapons inspections, the armory inventory, barracks cleanliness, and all he says, I got two answers from two different leaders. The standard answer is, shut up and do it, because I said so. Okay. And then the other one is, hey, believe it or not, this stuff is going to be important should you ever go to combat. And that's it. And I guess there's a third one. The third one says, well, let me explain why we're doing this. It may seem trivial to you. It does apply to combat. And here's why. Right now, you may think that the physical training we put you through, why? Why do we have to go on these road marches? Why? Because we're going to Iraq and it's 120 degrees day after day. It's 110 degrees at night, and you won't make it. We'll have to medevac you for heat injuries and all that. You'll just break down. We're all going to lose 20 or 30 pounds. So you know where I'm going with this, Colin. Talk to the young guys out there. These things that are often put under the label in garrison and peacetime as discipline, do they have merit in combat?
I think they have some, and in part because we want it. Discipline is, it's that structure, right? And so I feel like combat is probably the most like unstructured thing that could ever happen, right? I mean, it's open warfare. They're trying to kill you and you're trying to kill them. And it's chess game, right? It's very unstructured. So I feel that establishing the backbone of that discipline does serve a purpose because it is trying to establish structure in a structureless environment. And so those things are applicable to combat as far as the mentality of it. So like every got to get a haircut every week, right? Your uniform back when BDUs, they had to be starched and pressed with the shine boots, and all that stuff was really annoying. But it's related to combat in that before you go on a mission, you should have that structure. Do I have my weapon and all the magazines? Is the battery good? Like, does the flashlight work? And so all that stuff in Garrison you did, as you wake up in the morning, you had that structure, there was these expectations, check the box, do this, do that, do this. Pre-combat stuff is the same way. You have to make sure your stuff's lined up. So the mentality of, okay, I have to establish a structure, same way every time, so I can depend on my backbone. Like I have this backdrop of things that need to happen, and I need that for combat. So I'm at 100% when I cross that line and I'm now outside the wire. The best case is to have all your ducks in a row, so to speak. So having your ducks in a row in Garrison and having your ducks in a row in combat, the mentality is the same because there are things you need to have set, and you have to do it every day. And there was a time where I can't remember exactly when my deployment was or when in the deployment, but I had we got back from a mission or something, and I was going to go shower. And I kind of just like threw my stuff on the bed. I just had like my whatever. I'm showering. Turns out that this little house we had used for like a small kill team, like a sniper, like OP, had been used by the enemy, and they had probably booby trapped it. And so they were going to call in an F-16 JDAM, 2 500-pound bombs to destroy that house and some other stuff. So anyway, I'm coming back from the shower, and then a dude rushes in the room. He's like, where are you? Where have you been? And I was like, oh, I was just showering. He's like, we got to go. Like, we're dropping a JDAM on Oja right now. And I look at my bed, and I just got shit everywhere. And I just, oh God, my boots are over there. Where's my uniform top, right? And then right then I was like, nope, never doing that again. So back to like the haircuts and the boots and whatever. It's like, no, my boots will be here. My uniform will be here. Everything has to be lined up, and it has to be kind of like set it up before anything happens. Because in combat, you just never know. You could be down the same road 100 times, and the 101 time it happens, then something's different, right? So it's that discipline of putting your ducks in a row, and also kind of how you carry yourself. And the reason we do that, especially in Iraq with the IEDs, right? So you are trained to kind of check this, look over there, make sure everything's the same. Every time you drive down that road, you're always checking looking for the same things. And that will save you, that could save your life, because maybe one day you look at that and go, wait a minute, that's different. And I only know it's different because I do the same thing every day. So as much as the haircuts and the boot shining and all that stuff was super annoying and expensive, it did kind of establish a mental framework in your head of, you need to make sure your ducks are in a row, because you could get caught in a bad spot if they are not. So there's a little bit of relatability there. But however, the one flip side of that is there were people who were like not good leaders, but man, their uniform was starched and pressed, and their boots look great, and on paper and from across the hall, they look like the super soldier, but they were actually pretty shitty. But it's almost like, well, hey, but he looks good. Look at that haircut, and so there was a piece of that where I was like, well, yeah, uniform, all that's very important, but let's go a little bit deeper and actually look at the person as well. So in Fort Bragg, there was a little bit of that where you were it almost seemed equal. Like, yeah, like, how are you as a leader? And then, oh, we got your uniform though, so that's good. And it was almost like having the haircut and the boots and all that somehow made you a good leader, but obviously it's not true. But that was like the vibe, and I was always confused by that because, yeah, he looks good, but he's not good. So what is the end result? He's not good. Like, you can't rely on him to do the right thing. So then who cares what his uniform looks like? Because when it matters, that guy's not going to be able to perform. So it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, I love that. What I used to say is, because I entered the post-Vietnam Marine Corps very quickly post-Vietnam, and back then, Colin, if you as a Marine, if you had a high and tight, starched sateens, spit shine boots, and you were decent, weren't fat, you looked good in uniform, and you could PT, that alone made you a good Marine.
Exactly.
And it got you promoted. And that was on the officer level too. There wasn't any combat to prove themselves. So officers started, the running boom hit in the early to mid 70s nationwide. I remember when running shoes got invented. We used to run in boots or Chuck Taylors. I remember when running, right about 1977 is when running shoes actually got invented. I bought a pair of Nike waffle trainers, which was the first running shoe ever out. And my point is this: the officers, the young lieutenants, their company commanders and majors and all that, they'd been to Vietnam. So they got all the stuff, on their chest. Lieutenants are looking for things to differentiate themselves, so they started running. And then the standard became, you had to be a marathon runner. You had to be.
Yeah, you got to take it higher. You got to be 10 out of 10.
You had to be a sub 6 minute miler, or you were dog shit.
Yep.
And so the Marine Corps got lulled into a sense of look good, must be good.
Yes, agreed.
And then we got two commandants in a row, Lewis Wilson and General Barrow, who both, Wilson had the Medal of Honor from Guam in World War II, and Wilson had the Medal of Honor, and Barrow had both the Distinguished Service Cross from the Army gave him that, and the Navy Cross, had been in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and those guys started the substance of it. Hey, look good does not necessarily mean good. And they changed the Marine Corps, and so the point is, and I think you're alluding to this stuff does transfer in the best way, and it should be explained, but there are also bad leaders that make people do stuff in the name of discipline, that it's going to help you, that it's just bullshit. So the rest, you're acknowledging that, because I knew that the answer was. So the question I'm asking you is, these youngsters out there, they don't want to do that. What's your advice? What are some ways that if you had to do it all over again in the conventional Army and you were a leader, what would you do to breed the kind of discipline that really does pay off in combat?
I would do those things that like the boots and some of that stuff, because that's like a PCI or pre-combat inspection, right? Same kind of deal. So I would establish that, but I would connect it to combat. I would tell that story. I would say, I know it seems dumb that every Monday morning we got to have the uniform this way, we have our haircut, but the reason why is we are setting a standard for ourselves that we can take with us to combat, and then use that same mentality of making sure everything is like arranged. And so and that discipline is also important though, because you need to trust your leaders in that if a leader says, we're going to go hit this house, or we're going to go around this corner, whatever it may be, discipline plays into that there's a trust within your leadership and the people that you're with. And discipline really is trying to do the same thing, same way every time, right? And so that discipline can also carry over to combat or even medical stuff, right? Especially medical stuff. Making sure your IV bag is set up the same way every time. So then if you pop open your IV kit, you don't have to like look around and where's the needles, everything is lined up. So I would do those things that are, still expected of the conventional Army, but I think I would tie it to the combat piece a little bit more and maybe explain that a little bit more. And the importance of it. And because the one time you don't bring the extra battery, I swear it'll be the one time you needed it, right? And so that the discipline piece, connecting it to combat and like why we do those things, and just having those conversations, and Private Murphy's Law, right? Just like things are going to go wrong, you know what's going to happen. So the best way to go against that is to be as prepared as possible. And so I would try to instill that discipline just by doing some of that stuff, but also in our training, and try to really kind of really put a solid boundary on some of that training and be like, this is why we're doing it. All right, let's do it again. Okay, let's do it again, but this time we're going to do it faster. And we're just going to keep changing and getting better.
Yeah. I know, to amplify that as a medic, this is near and dear to your heart. One of the common complaints I heard, I might have even said it as a PFC and Lance Corporal, is what is the fixation with the platoon sergeant and squad leaders? What is their fixation that everybody's first aid kit has to be put in a certain place on our web belt? And what is their fixation with canteens being in the right spot? How many canteens? And then, as I understand it, during the long wars after a while, what is their fixation where everybody has to have their tourniquets in the same spot in their pack or their right cargo pocket and all of that? And they just didn't get it. I'll give you another minute to expand on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you're right. If you never connected the dots on that, maybe like a new guy wouldn't connect the dots because he hasn't seen it. In Iraq and then in Afghanistan as well, when I was there as a dirty contractor for a bit, they would have tourniquets with there's a little red end of the strap, and that would be outside your pocket. And so you'd see just the tip of the strap would be right there on your shoulder. Okay, every soldier in country had a tourniquet in that pocket with the red dot right there. So you knew upside down, again, because combat is such a weird, structureless environment where anything can happen and you are living life by the second. If you, at least that tourniquet's in that pocket. And if I flip this soldier over and I don't know, and let's say there's a soldier who's on the ground, it doesn't matter who this guy is. He could be one of my guys. He could be the other company, whatever. I know I could flip this dude over and I could go right in this pouch, and that's where the tourniquet is. And that is also a discipline piece. It's just making sure everything is where it should be. Because again, your best attempt to establish some framework of reliability where you can rely on your own guys, and that comes with that discipline, and it all kind of works together because you're hedging your bets. You something bad might happen, so what can we do to kind of prevent it from going from bad to worse? And I think discipline kind of plays into that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've talked about this a little bit obliquely already during our conversation, but I want to talk about it specifically. I mean, I think it's a given that everybody before and even during combat, even seasoned combat vets, you're going to feel fear. If you're a normal human being, you will feel some element of fear. And I think, especially new guys, I know I felt that, fear gripped me. Everybody tells me it's going to happen. I believe them. Is it going to grip me to where I can't do anything? And, I think most people will be okay. The training kicks in. I think most people will be okay. But I want to hear your thoughts for the youngsters out there again. What's your advice? Will they feel fear? And is there anything they can do to be able to better control it and motor on with their duties?
So, I mean, and that's the toughest things, because you never know how it's going to happen. And so what can we do to kind of fix that? So I would say establishing that grit and that determination in your training, and also doing weird things like one thing I had not seen the military do, at least the 82nd didn't do it, but in the Blackwater world, they would do it. They would load magazines, but they would load plastic rounds that would cause some sort of misfire. And you, as the shooter, didn't know that was in there. They're like, all right, here's your magazine, go ahead. And then, or sometimes you like one of these mags has a fake bullet in it, but you didn't know which one. So they would put you in a really stressful environment, give you a weapon, and then you'd be doing something and then it wouldn't work. And then you'd go like, wait, I need to work through this right now. So it's that thinking on your feet and doing training and putting people in situations that require that ultimate flexibility of like, okay, well, this didn't work. I have 2 seconds, better go this way instead. And so it's establishing some of those things. And the thing is, you're never really going to know. The first time I took fire, it was really funny. You would think, oh, I'm going to be kicking down a door, or the bad guys are going to be shooting from a rooftop or something like that. Nothing like that. Some people have those stories, but I don't. We were on where the FOB, it was an Iraqi base, and we were kind of on where the road meets the highway kind of a deal. We were in our trucks, and I think we were QRF for some other element. And the plan was, we're going to sit here in our trucks, the other companies over there doing a raid or whatever it was. So we're just going to sit here and wait. And it was kind of where the FOB road meets the highway. So we're sitting there and it's dark. Everyone's in their car, everyone's in their vehicles. And then, half hour later, we're taking our helmets off. Another half hour later, we're popping our body armor. We're popping the vest so we can, it's July or whatever it was. It was Ramadan. So that's why we were there, because everything's always hotter. Like combat wise, it's always worse in Ramadan typically. So anyway, so we're sitting there, and it gets to the point that, fast forward an hour or two, people are on the ground sleeping. You got dudes lying on top of the Humvees. They're racked out. And I was too. I was listening to music. I had my metal iPod, because that's how they were back then. I remember I was laying down. And I had my helmet, because everyone was. Again, I was like, are we laying down? Okay, I guess we will, because other people are. So I lay down. I have my body armor on. It's cracked. And I got my helmet on the ground. And I have the pad of the helmet on top of it. And I'm not like asleep, but I'm just like laying back. And I got my head up there, and I'm listening to music or whatever. And I look over, everyone's just kind of doing the same thing. We're just like, whatever. And this is early on the deployment. So we don't have any understanding of like how stupid that was. Then we started taking fire. A guy came by, who was like a drive-by shooting. A car drives by and just started spraying, just like shooting the AK. So I wake up to gunfire, I get up to gunfire, and I look around, and people are literally running into each other as they're trying to get back in their Humvees. Dudes are falling off the top of Humvees. They're like combat rolling off the Humvee onto the ground, right? I mean, it's a clown show. I step into the Humvee, because I know it's a bit bulletproof, right? And then we're like, all right, are we going to leave? I remember thinking, where is my helmet? Where is my helmet? In that moment, because I was so like relaxed and just like in my own world, in 2 seconds, there's gunfire. And I'm in the Humvee, and I'm like, where is my helmet? And for that 10 seconds or whatever it was, I literally had no idea where it was, because I was so stressed and so amped, and it was the first time I'd been shot at, and what does all this mean? And remembering that my helmet was on the ground, it was 10th on my list of things I was thinking about. So you need experiences like that to kind of, again, that's a mistake, right? And we never made that mistake again. And even if we were on QRF, like, we might have been relaxed later, but we were never that relaxed, right? We had learned that lesson. And so you just kind of have to put people in that environment where maybe you're running through a training scenario twice, let's say, and like a medical scenario maybe, and you run them through it, and they get it. Cool. Well, then maybe that third time, they might just be expecting the same thing. You can even lie to them and be like, yep, let's just do that one more time and do the same thing. And then you run through that third time, and then you throw a wrench in it. And however, whatever that may mean, you can take the tourniquet out of the bag and see if they check their bag. I've done that before. Or I'll take, in my EMT, where I teach EMT as well, I'll remove the EpiPen from the bag, and I won't tell them. And I'm like, all right, here's your aid bag. Just make sure you got what you need. And they kind of look through it, and they're like, yeah, because the previous 3 times they've done a run, everything was in the aid bag. So they go, yeah, everything's here. Yeah, it looks good. Well, then that third run, I give them an anaphylactic shock scenario, and then there's no EpiPen, right? And so what are you going to do? And you can see the like mind blowing, like, oh, what do I do now? Right? Like, oh no. Right. So to train some of that out, or to train that aspect of it, that's what you have to do. You have to make it weird. You have to kind of recreate in that environment where, like I said, where I was like on the ground sleeping and get shot at. Like, well, I didn't even think about this being something that could happen. So for the younger guys in training, you kind of have to try your best to recreate those scenarios and put chaos in environments where no one was expecting it, to get used to it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. You know, I know you've heard this term. Most of us in the military have called the fog of war. And it's attributed to Napoleon, Clausewitz, a bunch. But essentially, the paraphrase, the summary is, the fog of war happens in battle. You know, I think it was Patton. Somebody says, no battle plan survives the first shot. You know, plans are made to provide structure, but you will have to deviate from them, you know, in combat, especially if you're against a worthy adversary. I think it was Clausewitz said something like, you know, the fog of war, he attributed it to the fog of war, that all of a sudden the most seemingly simple tasks suddenly become impossibly difficult. Even walking or loading your weapon, or just, you know, it's like a weight on you. So I want to ask you, is it real? Have you experienced the fog of war? And what's your advice to these young warriors out there? I think they understand everything's not going to go to plan, but what do you think about the fog of war? And if it's going to happen, and it will, we both agree on that, I think, is there anything they can do to better minimize its effects when it happens?
Well, I think part of that is acknowledging that it's a thing. And like, I was told about it kind of, fog of war, right? You don't really have a good relationship with it. And maybe someone could have told me what I'm about to say and it wouldn't have made a difference. Who knows? But you're right. The fog of war is a real thing. Sometimes it feels like, it's almost like when your computer gets really glitchy and you're like, typing is kind of weird. Maybe the mouse doesn't work as well. So the fog of war, you get all this just extra stress and extra stimulus kind of coming at you, and your brain, at least initially. I mean, eventually, if you do it enough, then you can kind of get over it to a degree. But those first few times, you really are kind of glitching because your brain is trying to process things and do what you've always done, but you're doing it in that very different set of circumstances. And there will be deficits. You will load your weapon slower. You will not think as clearly. There will be those issues. And so basically know that it's there, know that it's out there. Like one of the 18 Deltas I work with in Utah had told me this. We were talking about just medical, because we do drop zone, we jump out of airplanes, and so people get injured and stuff. And so we were talking about that and how we've had a few like fractures that were kind of similar to each other. So we almost had it down to a degree. We're like, oh yeah, we know what to do here. But he was saying that he's like, you have to understand that we can't get complacent and we can't get too cocky. He's like, because there's the call is out there where you're going to get caught with your pants down. Like the call is out there that you're going to slip up and you're not going to be ready for it, and bad things are going to happen. And if you don't think that call is out there, you're delusional. So it's like, and that stuck with me. I was like, you're right. You have to respect the fog of war. It is out there, and it's a landmine that's out there somewhere. Potential, right? And so you just have to understand that is a thing that occurs. It's a natural process, again, of just structureless combat. And then I guess if you're in it or to avoid it, understand like, whoa, wait, I think I'm here. Like, I think I'm in the fog. So don't freak out, acknowledge it for what it is. Okay. So this is normal. This is almost like an expectation. Like, okay, we're here. I made it to the fog. So let's try and slow it down a little bit, because I understand that the normal way I process things and the normal way I do things is going to be different now in this context. So I'm in a different situation that I'm kind of unprepared for. So let's slow it down a little bit. Maybe let's not just rely on, I'll just do the same thing I've done every time. Well, you did the same thing every time in that same circumstance. This is a new circumstance. So when you find yourself and I've been there where I literally, the first time I saw close air support from an Apache helicopter, like 50 feet away from me. I mean, I could feel the blast from the 30 millimeter grenades. And oh yeah, I mean, there was a good, I don't know how long, to be honest, but I was definitely like, what? And I just kind of sat there, and I remember thinking like, okay, that's happening. Let me just slow it down real quick and like check my peripheral, and you just kind of have to work. And it's kind of that process of using your brain and thinking outside the box. And like one thing I thought was interesting that the Blackwater training did, that kind of, I think helped, was when we are doing, it's called the car's eye diamond. It's like the diamond, protective diamond, when you have to like walk around people. Or, we call it the meat bunker, right? So gunfire, everyone just collapses on the principal. Yeah. So we're doing it, and it's very structured. It's like front goes far, rear stays near, and if you're approaching the doorway, this guy goes here, and then that guy goes here, and it's a very structured thing, and it's our job, right? I mean, if you want to get this job, you have to go through their selection vetting process, and part of that is they teach you the K diamond, and you got to pull it off, right? And you got to do it, and so if you screw it up, they won't hire you, and you've gone down to the training, and they'll just send you home, and that was it, right? So they would put us through the K diamond and just, all right, walk over here. Okay, I want you to go around that building, go through this hallway, come back, or whatever. So we'd be doing it, and we would be, again, not combat, but the stress would be high, because it's like, all right, we just learned this walking maneuver. If I don't pull this off, I won't get hired. I mean, this is a big deal. And so what they would do is, as you're walking around, they would come by and they would just hold up 2 fingers or 4 or whatever. And then you would have to say the number. So you'd be in your head going, okay, I'm going here, and then I'm doing that. Okay, oh, this time we're actually going to go around that way. So you're in your own head. You're not even paying attention. And the first few times they would do it, and you would make eye contact with the guy, and he'd hold up 4 fingers, and like you didn't even see the fingers, because you were so just in your head, just kind of like, well, okay, wait, I have to go over here now. But then as they kept doing it, he was like, oh, and then eventually you would kind of work through that stress, and then you'd see the guy do that, and then all you have to, you just yell the number. So you'd be doing your walk, you'd see it, you'd go 4, and then he'd be like, okay, and then next person, right? So that fog of war piece, I thought that was interesting. It kind of, they put you in the fog of war, very stressful environment, but then they'd also trained you to kind of pull yourself out of it. They kind of pull you out of it too. And so it was that brain processing part where you kind of worked up to this, like, I'm doing this, but I'm also looking over here and I'm doing this. And so that was one interesting thing of training that I saw on that side that I thought kind of helped that process.
Yeah, I love it. Well, listen, we've been going for about 90 minutes, Colin. I think this is a natural time to break and respectfully ask you if you would come back and do part 2 for the rest of the outline and all that, because I want to make this digestible to the audience and all of that. So if you're okay with that, I will reach out to you. But before I let you go, first of all, thanks for this. This is a golden conversation right here. You're spewing a lot of insights and advice. I wish I could hear this when I was 18 years old. It would have helped, So thank you for that. And what are you doing now? I'm sure the audience is curious. What you mentioned a little bit up front. So what are you doing now? And I think there's a chance that maybe other people, maybe even other podcasters or whatever, would want to contact you. So what are you doing, and how can people contact you?
Okay. Yeah, good. And you're right. The way I am a high school teacher. I currently teach high school. I teach EMT and anatomy and physiology, like college level. And I teach my anatomy and physiology with like a medical slant, because most people in my course are in some sort of, they're pursuing some medical field, whether it be dental, CNA, whatever. So I'm teaching high school, and that's part of kind of like the same thing in this podcast. They don't always like it, but I talk to them the way I wish someone had talked to me, because there's certain lessons I had to learn the very hard, painful way. And who knows, maybe someone could have told me when I was 19 and that wouldn't have worked. But regardless, I do try to I try and pay that forward. And instead of what I was treating the 82nd, where they just keep it rolling, right? I'm going to try to, make a difference and go, you know what, that's how it happened with me, and I didn't like that, so we're going to do this instead. So I currently teach high school, those programs. I do enjoy it. Some of my students have gone on to be to med school, firefighters, nurses, different things. And I volunteer with Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue Unit and with the Rural Ambulance Company up in the mountains. And I also wrote a one-man show about coming back from Iraq and how it changes you. And I guess we can get this in part 2, but a portion of that also is going to be that self-reflection piece is really important. You have to look at yourself and kind of process what you're going through. So I wrote a long kind of story how that happened. I did not just set out to make a one-man show, but I have a friend I knew from the Idaho Shakespeare Festival, and he had some questions about coming back from Iraq and those things. And it kind of just into this project over the last few years. So it's a one-man show called Bent Compass, and it's as in your compass is how you navigate life. And after a combat deployment, your compass gets a little bent. Maybe it's get a little disoriented. And so how do you now continue to live your life with a different compass? Because now your things are just a little different. And so how do you kind of navigate that? So that has been touring around. It's going to be in Arizona and Yale University, of all places, in around Veterans Day. And so I'm working with that. I just helped write it. There's actually a guy who performs it because it's an hour long of just this pages of dialogue. So very impressive for him. So the show is called Bent Compass. You can just Google that. It'll pop right up. There's not a lot of other Bent Compass stuff out there. And then Bent Compass also has that Instagram page as well. I think it is just like at Bent Compass. So, and that's usually, and we'll just kind of operate that. And then that show, just for anyone in the military or who's watching, we are happy to put that on. We don't charge. We might charge money if we have to spend $1,000 on airfare or something. But typically we don't charge for it. We are happy to come out. One year we did it at a medical conference. Again, it's an hour-long one-man show, and we are happy just to get it out there. So we don't charge for it or anything. If there's anyone out there who would like to see it, you can look it up on either Google it or on Instagram. And then if it's something you want to explore, we're happy to come out and do it and do talkbacks after and all that stuff.
Good, cool. Well, thank you so much, my friend. Like I said, a really good podcast, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much, Colin. And for the audience out there, I think agree that this has been a great conversation. So stand by, the YouTube channel and other platforms will announce when Colin's part 2 will be up. And as always, go forth and lead well.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at combatleadership.com. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient philosopher Plato. Only the dead have seen the end of war.